Hi gang, and welcome to the first lesson of Dr. Fitzgerald's Grammar Nuts and Bolts. Now the point of this series is to focus on the most common grammar issues beginning writers face, without getting too deeply into the weeds. If you can master these next several grammar concepts in the broad sense, then you will be able to eliminate perhaps 95% of the grammar errors others make. And we are starting with a very common grammar error, sentence fragments. So what is a fragment? Well, it's a non-sentence. It's a group of words that pretends to be a sentence, but isn't really a sentence. It may start with a capital letter and end with a period, but it still isn't really a sentence. Now, maybe some of you were taught a sentence must have a subject, an actor, and a predicate, an action that the actor takes, and it expresses a complete thought. Okay, fine, but that's not especially helpful, and that's why I didn't write it down. I don't expect you to either. Why do we write in fragments? Because in conversations we often speak in fragments. Perhaps someone may ask you, "Why did you leave the party so early?" To which you may respond, "Because I was tired." That's a perfectly reasonable response, yet it's not really a sentence, is it? It's a fragment. It starts with a capital B and ends with a period, but it's not a sentence. If you were to walk into a room and say, "Because I was tired," people would be saying, "Yeah, what about it?" Right? Okay, so now before we go any further, it's time for a key concept, and that is independent clause. What is an independent clause? So no matter what else you may have been told about independent clauses, I want you to memorize this definition. A group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. Say that out loud with me. A group of words which by themselves can be a sentence. Did you say it aloud? Okay, let's say it 4 more times together. A group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. A group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. A group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. A group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. Have you got it? Now note that we include the words can be. A group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. Why can be? Well, an independent clause can by itself be a sentence, but it doesn't have to be. Look at this sentence. I was hungry. Perfectly decent independent clause. But what if I add, because I skipped breakfast, I was hungry? That doesn't change the fact that I was hungry is an independent clause. I can even add more. Because I skipped breakfast, I was hungry, so I ate an early lunch. So that's why we say can be. An independent clause can be a sentence, but it could also be part of a larger sentence. Just know that every sentence you have ever heard has at least one independent clause. By the way, if you think about it, the words independent clause must imply there is something called a dependent clause or a subordinate clause, and that's true. Don't write this down and don't stress over this, but to be a clause, you need a subject doing a verb. For here, the difference between an independent clause and a dependent clause is an independent clause can by itself be a sentence or part of a larger sentence, while a dependent clause cannot by itself be a sentence. It needs to attach itself to a sentence that has at least one independent clause. So going back to our friend here, because I skipped breakfast, I was hungry, so I ate an early lunch. Because I skipped breakfast is a dependent clause. It cannot by itself be a sentence. I was hungry, and so I ate an early lunch are both independent. Either by itself could be a sentence. Okay, so deep breath. Finally, let's get back to the reason we are all here, sentence fragments. So as you'll recall, it's a group of words that pretends to be a sentence, but really isn't. Now there are a variety of reasons a group of words may not be a sentence. And recall a little while ago I said, and again, don't worry about this too much, a sentence has to have a subject doing a verb, and it must express a complete thought. Well, maybe there's no verb for a subject to do. There's no action for the actor to do. 3 friends and I. Did what? Maybe there's no subject to do a verb. Went to the store. And maybe a perfectly decent independent clause. 3 friends and I went to the store is spoiled by a subordinate conjunction like since, when, or because. Because 3 friends and I went to the store, well, what? What happened? Kind of leaves us hanging. It's a fragment. The most common type of fragment is one that is standing next to an independent clause, but is not itself an independent clause. Look at these 3. Each one is an independent clause followed by a fragment. And since we read left to right, it's as if they're hiding in the flow of the language. I was tired because I didn't sleep well last night. Because I didn't sleep well last night is not an independent clause. It's a fragment. It's a sneaky little fragment. Okay, before we fix these sentences, let's cover something quick and dirty here. Okay, just write down this definition and don't stress over it too much. A subordinate conjunction. It's a word that turns an independent clause into a dependent clause and therefore a fragment. Okay? Just make sure this is in your notes. Go ahead, press pause. I'll wait. Okay, so we could take a perfectly decent independent clause, I was tired, stick something in front of it, and it is no longer an independent clause. Because I was tired. Well, what? Because I was tired. So because I was tired, or while I was tired, or since I was tired, or when I was tired. Okay, none of those bottom 4 is an independent clause. Why? Because somebody came along and stuck a subordinate conjunction because, while, since, when in front of it, and it's no longer an independent clause, and therefore by itself it's a fragment. They're easy to spot once you know what they do. Okay, so how do you fix fragments? Well, you pretty much have 2 choices. You can attach it to an existing independent clause, or you could rewrite it so it is now independent. So let's look at a few. I was tired because I didn't sleep well last night. Well, because I didn't sleep well last night is not an independent clause. So we could fix this one by attaching it to I was tired. I was tired because I didn't sleep well last night. How about this next one? That goat had it in for me. Kicked me right in the shin. Well, kicked me right in the shin doesn't tell me who's doing the kicking, not in that sentence at least. So by itself, it does not have a subject doing the verb kicked. So that kicked me in the shin is a fragment. Here we could fix it by turning it into an independent clause. That goat had it in for me. It kicked me right in the shin. How about this one? I have 3 siblings, Ted, Larry, and Sally. Well, Ted, Larry, and Sally are 3 nouns. They're not doing a verb, so that's a fragment. This one we could fix by deciding I have 3 siblings is an introduction to a list, Ted, Larry, and Sally. Okay, so let's have another quick and dirty moment, this time about colons. The most common use of a colon is to introduce a list, right? But be careful. Here's a sentence with a list in it. For breakfast, I ate bacon, cereal, and toast. Now, I think most of us would agree it's just a simple list. There's no reason to have a colon there. That colon feels unnecessary somehow. But look at this next sentence. For breakfast, I ate 3 items, bacon, cereal, and toast. This is an appropriate use of a colon. That colon seems to be saying, and here they are. Here are the 3 items, bacon, cereal, and toast. How about a comma instead of a colon? For breakfast, I ate 3 items, bacon, cereal, and toast. That's not as good as the colon, because some people might read that as, for breakfast, I ate 6 items. 3 items plus the bacon, the cereal, and the toast. The colon makes it clear that bacon, cereal, and toast are the 3 items. The colon is a way of saying, and here it is. So what's the difference between for breakfast I ate bacon, cereal, and toast? For breakfast I ate 3 items, bacon, cereal, and toast. Why does the top one not seem to need a colon and the second one needs a colon? Well, because for breakfast I ate 3 items is an independent clause. For breakfast I ate really isn't. It's not a complete thought. So, bottom line, and again, put this in your notes, use a colon to introduce a list only if it follows an independent clause. So, time for our sentence fragment summary. A fragment is a non-sentence that pretends to be a sentence. it lacks an independent clause. And just to remind us, an independent clause is a group of words that by themselves can be a sentence. Couple of other issues: subordinate conjunctions such as because, while, since. These turn independent clauses into fragments. And finally, if you use a colon to introduce a list, it should be after an independent clause. Well, I want to thank you for watching. Our next grammar issue will be on run-ons and comma splices. Have a beautiful day.